welcome to another edition of the Ask Bill Keegan Show. I'm your host, Bill Keegan, town manager here in Foxborough. And my guest today is the newest member of our executive staff, Chief Bill Baker. And welcome, Bill.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Chief, you've had a pretty illustrious career, and we just ended a very lengthy process in which you were the successful candidate for actually following up on a person who's been in that position for 31 years. So obviously big shoes to fill, but we all felt that you were capable of doing that. So can you give the members of the audience a little bit of your background, and then we'll get into some of the more detailed things that you're working on right now?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm proud to say that I'm an old friend of Ed O'Leary's. I welcomed Chief O'Leary into the Mass Chiefs Association in 1983 or 4 when I was the police chief in Southborough at the time, and Ed became the police chief in Foxborough. So I'm proud of that long-standing relationship, and actually was very familiar with the town of Foxborough, having served as director of police training in Massachusetts, and we had a police academy here back in those days. But I come to the town of Foxborough with kind of a diverse background in law enforcement and public safety. I've been a municipal police chief in 3 New England states, including Maine, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. I served as the Commissioner of Public Safety for the state of Massachusetts in the Executive Office of Public Safety back in the early 1990s. And I was Assistant Director of the Justice Department International Section, where I mentored the national police chiefs in 36 countries around the world. Also been a municipal manager and a municipal lawyer, so I feel like I come with a background that will be relevant and helpful to the people of Foxborough. And as I said at the swearing in the other day, I'm very grateful to you and Mary Beth and to the selectmen and to the people of Foxborough for giving me this great opportunity.
Well, we're really happy to have you here, and clearly the nature of your background is such that you bring a lot of things to the table that we probably haven't seen here before. And so tell us a little bit about why you chose Foxborough as opposed to any place else in your career.
Sure. Well, I mentioned this at the swearing in the other day, but as you know, I was faced with a couple of other opportunities at the same time. And they were great opportunities, frankly. One of them was to rejoin the FBI in the New York division and do something very important regarding the killing of police officers that's occurring around the country. But the people who know me best and love me most, my family, my daughters in particular, said, you know, Dad, this is really what you were born to do. We've never seen you happier than when you're in the police chief's role, doing what you can do to make the world a better place. And so it was really largely the urging of my family and the uniqueness of Foxborough. It's similar demographically to Southborough, where I grew up, just up the road. But it has some, big town policing attributes like the stadium, for example, that add to the complexities of policing in a jurisdiction like this. So really, it was everything about the town of Foxborough: the location, the demographics, the type of policing that's required here, the presence of the stadium. All of those things really made this an attractive opportunity for me, and really contribute to me being so grateful for this opportunity.
Great. Well, it's so far it's been a great experience for both of us. And so tell me a little bit about why you think, or what is it that you think your broad national, international experience can impact, how it can impact this community, and particularly when it comes to law enforcement?
Well, I've often said, especially as a hiring authority sitting in your shoes, that there's certainly some benefit to having a local person who knows the local people and who knows the community. Right. And I feel like I bring the people of Foxborough that because I grew up just up the road in Southborough, and I'm familiar with the town of Foxborough. So that part of me is very much connected to the community, and the community relations piece of being a police chief is very important to me. But with the other complexities, and among them are the attitudes towards police these days around the country, the national debate on race and justice, the presence of the stadium and the complexities that brings to the community, are things that are not necessarily in the wheelhouse of all candidates that you look at for a position like this. And so I think my experience at the state level, running 22 public safety agencies in the state, has given me relationships there that we can bring to bear on Foxborough, and I think Foxborough directly benefits in that way. I think mentoring the national police leaders in 36 countries around the world, in some of the most complex countries in terms of poverty and war and corruption and all the things that they face, provides me with a unique perspective on how to attack some of the most significant problems facing communities, whether they're in Kazakhstan or in Massachusetts. So the other piece that I think has really been beneficial is when you go and live and work in places like that, and living in Haiti for a year, for example, in Port-au-Prince, the only white person anywhere in sight, the way I was treated there and the way I was received into that country and culture changed me. You know, it was a life-changing experience.
Sure.
And it really has caused me to rededicate myself to relationships between the police and diverse communities as a result of those international experiences. So I think that will also play a role in how I conduct myself as the leader of this agency and what kind of policing services we deliver to people at all ranges of the socioeconomic scale and from all international origins. So I really think the combination of local policing, state policing, and federal policing in the international setting put me in a unique position to contribute to your team and to this community in ways that might not be possible if you didn't have those experiences.
You know, it's you mentioned Haiti, and of course they've gone through a very, very trying time this past few weeks with the storm. Where I heard on the radio this morning that 80% of the crops are gone. So it's not. We haven't seen the end of really the impact of that storm. It's going to take quite a while before we see the final impacts of that. But it's a difficult place because they've gone through a major earthquake. They've gone through some really trying times to the people that live in that country, and economically, it's not the most wealthy place to be. So, if you were the chief there today, or working in that community today, what would be some of the things that you'd face? I mean, some of the things that you'd have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Haiti is, for all the places I worked in, of course, they didn't send me to places that were in good shape because they wouldn't need us there, obviously, right? So all of the places that I worked in were post-conflict countries, just coming out of civil war, ravaged by crime and corruption and poverty. So every place was difficult. But I've often said that Haiti was the most difficult of all. Because they on their worst day, on their best day rather, they are as difficult a place as any other place on the planet. And yet they're proud people, and I used to marvel, as did my visitors who would come to see me there, at the women who would lead the children up out of these concrete huts with no roofs and no furniture, dressed to the max, clean as can be, escorting the children to school. And you wonder, if you knew what kind of places they lived in and what the villages looked like, how they could come to school looking the way they did and smiling the way they were. They're just proud, wonderful, decent people. Right. And so even on their best day, the national police there were facing extraordinary hardships to try and protect people, because there's a lot of mental illness as a result of the conditions that people live in. Poverty and desperation breeds a lot of conflict between people. So many of the most dangerous neighborhoods, like Cité Soleil, were very dangerous places. And so the police deal with everything from trying to deal with homeless children wandering the countryside that didn't have families, to resolving conflict between warring factions in the difficult neighborhoods, trying to facilitate access to water and to medical care. The first week I was there, I came upon a fatal accident. There were 8 or 10 bodies spread out all over the highway. No ambulance ever came. Wow. And by the sunset, as I tried to administer aid to people, families would start showing up and just drag their deceased relatives into the back of a taxi or a pickup truck and take them home. Wow. Indescribable. So you add on top of that an earthquake, and now these storms. And any time a severe rainstorm or hurricane occurred in Haiti, I lived in a place called Montenoir in Pétionville, it was called. And every time a serious rainstorm occurred, I'd see bodies and pigs together floating down the mountain past my house in the deluge flooding that came by the front of my house. Wow. So this just is insult upon insult upon insult for people that don't deserve it. And I'm sure the death toll numbers that we're hearing on American television are underestimated by several factors, of 10 probably.
Well, it makes you so the perspective that you have in being in a place like Foxborough is a whole different world in that comparison.
Absolutely, and it affects you in everything you do. I mean, I this weekend getting out with my wife Annette to walk the State Forest Trail in Foxborough or to the Cranberry Bog Trail behind Patriots Place. Extraordinary, beautiful, natural trails,
Right.
clean, with no gunshots and
That's right.
no
And
complications
nice
that
and
you
quiet,
face. And
yeah.
so, enjoying all that Foxborough has to offer personally this weekend was a great opportunity too.
Yeah.
And I've told this story today, but I showed up in my office yesterday, and I had 40 notes from the IGO school first graders and kindergartners saying, "Welcome to Foxborough, Chief Baker."
Wow.
That doesn't happen every place.
No,
That's a unique attribute of a small town like Foxborough.
It tells you a lot about the community. It really
Absolutely.
does.
The community's
Certainly
got a
does.
big heart, and they've made me feel it this week.
Great. So tell me, it was clear at the swearing-in ceremony, which, by the way, I thought was really, it was a lot of fun to do that, and it was really a proud moment for me. I'm sure clearly for you, to see the people come out and departments represented from all over, have our offices there to stand behind you and go through that process was really moving in a lot of ways, and I thought it was really nice to see that. But your family plays an important role in what you've done over your career, and so tell me a little bit of how that affects your leadership and policing style.
Well, family, I often say, and maybe it sounds a little cliche-ish, but we've been issuing so-called cop cards that have a picture of the officer and a little bit about themselves to children and all the agencies that I've been associated with for almost 40 years. And every one of those cards, it says family is the foundation of a well-lived life, and I believe that. Right. So to have the children there, my mother, all my brothers and sisters, people from every department I've ever led, members of my new agency, and that wasn't lip service. I mean, I really consider them my new family. So I have my family that I've grown up with. I have my new family, which is the men and women of the Foxborough Police Department. It was an extraordinary day, and I tell you, my 87-year-old mother's calling me every day, still trying to get email address for you and addresses for the selectmen to send thank you notes, because they were beside themselves. They were very impressed with the attitude and the sort of environment and the mood of the place, and very grateful, as am I, for that wonderful day. And again, it says a lot about the heart of the place. You get off to a great start with a welcome to Foxborough like that, and I think it does speak volumes about the community that we all serve.
Well, I do, in noticing the other day, there were agencies from literally all over the state, including the FBI. We had the Department of Justice. We had the Undersecretary of Public Safety for the state was here. And so you've left an impression wherever you've been. So it's clear that your reputation precedes you coming here. You've only been on the job a week. So tell us a little about your first week.
The first week has been wonderful, and seeing the cards on my desk from the IGO school children was a good example of that. Obviously, the first week, it's a complex job, and I'm trying to get my arms around everything. So it's the old saying, you're kind of drinking out of a fire hose the first week. Lots of meetings and lots of issues and lots of things to do, but I like that. I like to be busy. And I think going back to your last question, relating to this first question, I think the impact of having such a close-knit family, it really drives almost every decision I make. Whether it's the way I treat the men and women that I work with. I want them to be happy coming to work. I want them, because that produces happy employees, which produces positive interactions with the public they serve. Right. So that's important to me. I look at the log every day to see what we're doing at our calls for service. And clearly anytime there's a medical call or the barricaded subject call we had the other night, as I said the other day, I think every contact we make, every relationship we build, every call for service that we respond to as police officers gives us an opportunity to make this world a better place. And so when I go to a call to a family in distress or whatever the call happens to be, I'm thinking about what I would like the police response to be if the police officers were responding to the home where my daughter and my grandchildren live. And so I think if you approach your responsibilities that way and put things in that context, and those kinds of things motivate men and women wearing the uniform, I think you end up with a good product and a good set of relationships between the public and the people we serve.
No, I agree. Thank you for saying that. So You know, this is an interesting town because we're pretty. It's a pretty quiet place during the day. It's a great residential community with lots of thriving businesses. You know, we've got international businesses as well as local businesses, and great school system, great services that the community enjoys. And then at night and weekends, we have one of the biggest venues in all of New England that provides national, international entertainment to the entire country at times. So, talk a little bit about that dynamic. I mean, it's a little bit. It's an interesting way to serve as as a police chief, because you're dealing with anywhere from a local traffic stop to major potential international incidents that could occur on a wide level.
Well, so that question breeds a lot of things in my mind. So one of the things is, it's part of what makes this attractive to me is just the complexity of it. And I've dealt with large event policing as the police chief in Laconia with Motorcycle Week that brings 300,000 or 400,000 people to a similar sized community. In every one of my international venues, I was directly involved mentoring the national police chiefs, many of whom in Asia and Europe and Latin America had large stadiums that hold 100,000 people and host major sporting events. So all of this is right in my wheelhouse. But the other part of your question that's important, I think, is that as people think about policing in a community like this, and it happened to me just the other day, I met a man in the lobby who had had an accident, and he learned that I was the new police chief, and he looked at me and he said, well, it won't be much for you to do in Foxborough, or something to that effect about how quiet it was. And I had just been up, at 2 o'clock in the morning at the barricaded subject call a few hours earlier.
Right.
And so it always creates an opportunity to educate people, because I think that's what's missing in the tension between the police and some segments of our society is there's a distinct lack of understanding about the complexities of this job. And so, not to be dramatic about it, but I will say that Foxborough's proximity to Boston and Providence, having the major highways running through the center of the town, the fact that you host, I've heard estimates of 12 million people a year through Patriots Place and the stadium, all means that you're not policing the 18,000 people that live in Foxborough and that were raised here. So the men and women of law enforcement need to be ready for the transition from dealing with 3-generation families of Foxborough that they're familiar with to dealing with an out-of-control gunman who wants to take their life or somebody else's. And, I was heavily involved in the issue of police killings around the country, interviewing cop killers and bringing the lessons learned from the cop killers to the police around the country to try and keep them alive. And the cop killers that survived these confrontations, who submitted to our interviews, told us that the advantage that they have is the cops are under intense pressure to be the good local men and women and to, not look mean and not touch their gun and not speak harshly to people. And they said, when people like me come along, I got a distinct advantage. They're just not ready because it's not a fair fight.
Right.
And they talked about that at length in some very interesting interviews. And so I always try and encourage people to think about, yes, on a good day, on a typical day, pretty quiet here.
Yeah.
But it's the men and women of law enforcement that are the first responders when the worst possible day happens.
Right.
And they need to be ready, and they need to be able to make that transition from the best day to the worst day. And it's not something every person can do,
Right.
nor is it something every person is willing to do. When most people hear gunfire and see conflict and confrontation, they're headed for the exit, and our folks are headed in to take care of business, whatever the business is.
Exactly.
So I try and encourage people to think about that, because in my case, I've been personally and directly involved in the loss of at least 3 law enforcement officers who I talk about often. George Hanna in Auburn, Massachusetts, and Bobby Mortell in Paxton, Massachusetts, and my friend and classmate and coworker Mark Charbonnier in another small town down on the Cape. And all 3 of them were gunned down in towns of less than 4,000 people.
Wow.
Lesson learned, it can happen any
It can
place.
happen anywhere.
And
And you have to be ready.
And
all the
I
time.
just think the men and women of law enforcement deserve to have people educated on that issue, and I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt, and I think law enforcement leaders have an obligation to educate people about that.
I think it's so important, and I think now you have the opportunity on a bigger scale, bigger stage, if you will, because because we get the exposure not only locally but on a broader level because of the community that we are. But to actually talk about that and let people know that it's a much more dangerous job today than it's ever been, and that we need to respect that, and we need to be mindful of that. I think that the average person, and hopefully we're going to reach some of those the average person through this broadcast, is just to let people know that it's not just a simple case of driving a local cruiser down the street to and pulling people over. It's a much more complex job than it is. And it's ever been.
No question about that. And I think statistically, and again, this all gets lost in the commotion of the national debate, but I wrote President Obama and the AG Holder a letter 3 years ago, and I implored them to help change the national debate, the tenor of the national debate. Because I said, my fear is if the national debate keeps going in the direction it is, we're going to have more dead black kids and we're going to have more dead cops, because the debate nationally is unhealthy and unfocused and irrational in my view. And so day to day in Foxborough as the new police chief here, I got to tell you, I'm much more worried about an ambush attack on one of our law enforcement officers, because it's happening all around the country, than I am about grand scale terrorist attack. The ambushing of police officers who are responding to calls for service and meeting the needs of taxpayers in communities across this country is a phenomenon that's rising at a very alarming rate. And you never know where that threat's going to come from. And again, we want them to be community oriented and friendly and outgoing and communicative, understanding that they need to be able to flip the switch and go the other way in a heartbeat, and not everybody has that skill.
So those are very big issues for people to understand and obviously to think about, because obviously we live in a different world today than we've ever been. But tell us a little bit about some of your goals for the future of this department, because I now that you have a really interesting dynamic here. You've got a real mix of some tremendous talent on your department, and I think that given what you have now, you've got some really great building blocks to really go forward and do something special here. So tell us a little bit about what your short and long-term goals are.
Sure. So on a micro level, the first few days here have given me an opportunity to begin to invite officers in to have a private one-on-one conversation, and I'm finding that a number of them are local kids that grew up here, very heavily invested in their community. And one of the things I'm proudest of in the course of my career is my ability to mentor future leaders and to get the best out of people.
Right.
And so that's clearly a goal, is to mentor the talent that we do have at Foxborough PD, and to identify talent in the community and bring them into the mix as we have an opportunity to hire new employees and to promote existing employees. So that whole process of mentoring and developing the skills and abilities of the men and women that I work with is something that I'm very anxious to do. I'm also aware of the dynamic that exists in Foxborough in terms of the people who would like to see Foxborough stay the old-fashioned suburban town that it's always been, and the tension that exists with the growth and the presence of a stadium and a Patriots Place. And I think I get asked this question during the hiring process, but I think my role is to try and help build bridges between those two Foxboroughs, and to mitigate any negative impacts from development and change. Right. And as part of that process, my hope is to develop a strategic plan, a long-range plan for the department. And part of that strategic planning process will be to have public forums and invite members of the public from the neighborhoods around Foxborough to tell us what they want and what they expect and what they need from their law enforcement agency, and to help us find that balance between old Foxborough and what many think might be new Foxborough. So all of those things are part of the long-term plan. Develop the talent we have, engage in the strategic planning process, build on the foundation that already exists here, and make a good thing better. That's my goal, is to leave this place better off than I found it.
We've got just a few minutes left, but you're in a relatively new facility up at the public safety facility, and you work closely with Chief Roger Hatfield. And
which is a blessing in and of itself.
Yeah, that's right. Certainly is. So tell us a little about how you plan to partner with the fire department. I mean, because you're closely, you've got a real public safety opportunity here that creates so work hand in hand on a lot of different
Yeah,
things.
so again, on the sort of macro scale, strategic scale, there's needs and opportunities for the police and fire to collaborate on a response to big events and disasters that might occur, in a venue like Gillette. But more importantly to me is the day-to-day stuff. And so I hope this is common sense and intuitive to most people, but the fire department is lucky in some ways, many of us in law enforcement believe, because when they, their primary role nowadays especially is providing emergency medical care. And so you show up and save someone from a heart attack, usually you're in pretty good standing with the families involved.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas we have some significant obligations imposed on us by statute and by custom, and a lot of it is enforcement related obligations, which never leaves a good taste in people's mouths.
Right.
So I think one of the ways we can interact and really benefit the community is to make sure that we play a role as first responders in emergency medical calls. And again, that comes down to me. If my family lives in Foxborough, which they do now, and somebody has a heart attack or a medical emergency, and there's a police officer with some basic skills, 50 yards away, I would want them to stop and provide aid while we wait for the emergency medical providers from the fire department to show up.
Right.
So that's something that we'll be focused on.
Excellent. So you've moved into the community.
I have.
Right?
I am a proud resident of Foxborough.
There you go. And it's probably maybe just a short-term opportunity, but you would like to obviously try and find something longer term for the time being. But just as a resident of the community, what do you see as some of the things that we can do together? What can we do better as a town? I mean, just an outsider's perspective coming in.
Well, I think quality of life is what it's all about. I think people move here and people stay here because of quality of life.
Right.
And so, as the town manager, there's many things that you have your hand in every day that affect the quality of life here, with the zoning enforcement people and planning board members and others that you interact with on a daily basis. You and the selectmen, setting and implementing policies for the town. We certainly have our place, there and our role to play. But I think collectively, I think if we do the right thing for the right reasons and focus on making Foxborough a great place to live by paying attention to what we can control in terms of the quality of life here, I think that's the basic expectation. What can all of us do together to make the quality of life here as good as we can for the people that live here and work here? And that's certainly the approach that I'm going to take, and I know it's the approach that you take.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. So my guest today has been Chief Bill Baker, who has just started his new position and role as Chief of Police in the town of Foxborough during the past week. Just a couple other quick items before I sign off for today. Next meeting will be next show. I'm going to actually focus on the progress of the new town hall. Hopefully, doing a walkthrough and an actual perspective of how the construction is moving along. Right now, the project looks like it's on schedule, and we're looking to be sometime moving into the building sometime we think in May or June of next year. So we're very excited about the prospects of that and making good progress with that. And also, just another thing I want to bring to everybody's attention is that we are going to be holding a special town meeting on December 5th. That will be at the high school. There are right now about 17 articles that we're looking at. We have not finalized all the work on that, but we're working on that closely right now with the selectmen and with the advisory committee to try and pull it all together for you. So hopefully you'll be able to join us at that time. But until then, I'll see you at the next show of the Ask Bill Keegan show, and hopefully we'll get you on scene to see the new town hall at that time. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.